you very much, Daria. I'm delighted we can have this session. I know it's the last session of the conference, but let's hope we can keep it energetic. And let's have some discussion, maybe a little bit of controversial discussion, or something which can help us go forward. I thought before we kick off, let's introduce our panelists. So we start with Nanna, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Hank. Yeah, so my name is Nanna Thiele. I am head of digitalization with LINDE Engineering in the oil and gas industry. I am with LINDE for over 13 years now, which I wouldn't have never expected when I started directly after my studies of electrical engineering at the Technical University in Munich. I did do a lot of different jobs within LINDE Engineering, and that's the nice thing about being in a big company, because you can actually try out a lot and you can change a lot and you can learn a lot and grow. And in 2017, we created the digitalization department, and I was part of being one of the people that started at the very birth hour of digitalization within LINDE Engineering. And then beginning of last year, I got the opportunity to actually lead this. And that's what I'm doing since then. Also getting into the whole COVID crisis, pandemic challenges that we were facing there. But I think what I feel is that 2021 is really bringing a lot of wind back to ourselves, and we are definitely moving forward again very much and not being scared of the virus so much anymore.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Nanna. Arshad, please introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you, Hank. Hello, everyone. My name's Arshad Ahmed, and I'm a knowledge management practitioner and learning practitioner from the UK originally. Been in knowledge management and learning for over 20 years now, and had the pleasure of working with Hank in Oman. I've worked in Singapore as well, in continental Europe, and now I'm currently based in Saudi Arabia, working for Saudi Aramco as well. And I'm the founder of my own consultancy, INTOTO Knowledge.
Okay, thank you, Arshad. And finally, Prashant, please introduce yourself.
Yes, okay. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
Prashant, Soni, my name is, and I'm part of AKER BP. With a unit works with concept development and technology. Working with digitalization and with AKER BP, I have been with for 2.5 years almost. AKER BP is truly, literally a different oil company. We really want to be different because we have a very clear improvement agenda as well when it comes to digitalization, with willingness to organize and the work in a new ways, like we're doing things differently in many ways, not just how we do our job, but also how we collaborate with our partners, with suppliers, and with the other industries. For me, I have been working with oil and gas for the last 15 years, and the last 5 to 6 years with the digital, working with developing idea innovation to MVPs, afterwards to implementation, also with the data management platform. But the last 2.5 years with AKER BP was main focus on people. Because when it comes to digitalization, it's very easy and very simple. Like people literally go to technology and forget about the people, but it's actually the people who do the job and who will use the technology. So that has been the focus, how to prepare our people for tomorrow.
Okay, many thanks, Prashant.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so when I was approached by Daria to facilitate the session, I thought it was just a great title, How Not to Fail with Digital, as opposed to How to Succeed with Digital. So that prompted me to do a little bit of research, and I think one of the big research houses over the last couple of months brought out some research about the current status of digital projects. And they're estimating from doing research across the industry that only 15% are actually showing any return on investment at the moment, or any tangible value. So that means, could we say 75% are actually failing at the moment? That's maybe something to throw out immediately. When I was working in the Middle East, I was approached by a lot of the big consultancies came to talk to us, the big players, about their vision for digital. Very much the same story I felt coming across by most of them, the same processes, the same approach. And none of them touched on best practices or failure or learnings, or even the human capital element. So I'm great to hear that a couple of you have the whole people side of things, which I think are critical. So I thought maybe just to open up the first question to the panel, and we'll go around and get your views. It's in three parts. The first one is really from a holistic viewpoint. What do you think is the current health of digital projects that you're seeing, that you're experiencing? And then really, what do you think is working and what is actually failing at the moment? Again, it'll be fascinating to get your replies back. So that's the current status of projects. What do you see that is actually working and things which are having failure behind that? So maybe, Nanna, we could kick off with you first, your words of wisdom.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, well, yeah. I think I'm not there yet at the golden pot of wisdom, but I try my very best.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, I definitely go with Prashant. A lot of people think that digitalization is all about technology and that you actually have to look into what hot stuff is out there, you know. But in the end, it's the people. Exactly, it's the people doing the work. So I think what we did in the beginning as well, we were looking a lot into opportunities like what does new technology offer for us. It was a lot of talk about augmented reality, virtual reality. What can you do with IoT? And we were looking a lot into that. And what we realized, and I think this is a promising thing, and we created products out of it that we can sell today, which are really great products, which I really like because I was one of the project managers actually doing them, creating these products. So we developed quite nice solutions there. But what we also understood on the way there is that it's like the Maslow pyramid, right? If you want to cover the peak of the pyramid, let's say doing virtual reality with people that are normally out of the oil and gas business, which is probably not the perfect fit when you look at it with a first view, then we also have to look at what are the base needs of especially our people within our company and also of our customers, obviously. But maybe we also have to look inside and understand what hampers our people of being the most efficient person and doing the best job that he can, and how can we help there. And what we do now is we have done this for I think 2 years now. We're looking a lot inside and trying to do a lot of digital transformation, agile, you name it, right?
Yep.
All these buzzwords that you know. Yeah. But in the end, that's definitely, it's not new. We know this since 30, 40 years, and it's always, I don't care how you name it, digitalization or Scrum or Agile or Six Sigma or Steamboat or whatever names you choose, right? I don't care. In the end, it's what do the people need? And I do absolutely agree with, if you don't take the people with you, and if you don't also help the people being the most efficient self and most motivated self, you will never get a good solution. You will always get a 50 to 80% solution because the people are not motivated to give you the best solution that they can. So I think the first thing to not fail is keep the people motivated by listening to them and understand the real needs of them, and not jump to the conclusion that if we do the hippest technological solution, that will definitely solve our problems. Okay, so in your experience, what do you actually see working at the moment in digital that's being a success? Maybe nothing. I don't know. I think a lot is happening. So what we see is that the people definitely, like, we were working a lot to get the people in the creative minds again, and not working 100% only on I have to deliver, but actually question what they are delivering and if that is really needed. So let's say if an engineer is filling a data sheet, has he ever asked if all the data that he fills in is really needed by the department that is actually working with this data sheet, or does he just fill it in because that's how it is done, right? Yeah, exactly. And I think that this is something that we see is definitely changing, that people ask question, is that really how we should do it? Or do I have to challenge the status quo? And that is definitely happening. And I think if you are in that status, there is no failure at all anymore, because you are questioning a lot, and then you will get better and more efficient and more productive and more motivated, because actually your life gets easier. Okay, so here what you're saying is that the people buy-in is critical to the success of the people and the business buy-in. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Right. Right. You haven't noticed any spectacular failures currently, things which are, or generally in the industry, not necessarily organization, but have there been any communications about So yeah, but the biggest failure is I think you already named it, right? That we would say that 75% of the projects are actually failing because they are not giving a nice
return
ROI.
on investment. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that if you only measure that as success, then you are definitely failing, because you have to look at these 75%. What are they actually doing? It's not like I throw €1 in and 1.5 euros will drop out at the second that I put the euro in at the top. Sometimes you have to wait. Sometimes you have to, the company that you're working with has to mature into it. The people have to mature into it. So sometimes it's not, the time is not right, or it just takes time to actually get into a maturity state of your product that actually will bring you the ROI. So to just look into that and to say, I think that is one big failure, to just look at what euros come out of it, like now.
But maybe like, just to jump in there, Nanna, maybe the 75% failure is not necessarily a failure. It could be an investment as well, because it's learning there too.
The learning curves, yeah, a good point on that. Okay, thanks for that, Nanna. Arshad, over to you then. So the questions are about, what do you think is the current, what in your view, what is the current state of digitalization projects, and what do you think is working, what is failing? Great to get your views on that.
Yeah, sure. So I think compared to maybe Nanna and Prashant, Nanna especially, I think I'm probably a little bit of a relative newbie to this area. And to me, it's such a huge area for digital transformation, and I'll come back to that point. That's maybe one of the things. We both worked in knowledge management, and you must have heard so many times that they'll call a knowledge base this is our knowledge management solution, and they basically condense something down to one tool. And I think maybe that's the danger with digital transformation as well. To me, it's still relatively new enough to have a lot of buzz and excitement around it. So it hasn't failed in my mind, because it's still around. But what can we learn from the lessons of the past? I think, again, in my experience, without naming any companies, I've seen some really good work around, for example, using blockchain technology. So I've seen that for authenticating degrees. So for employment aspects, somebody might have a degree from an accredited university, but there is also fraud involved, unfortunately. And I've seen blockchain used very effectively to authenticate that. And then I've seen other uses like chatbots, which haven't been that great. So they've called it a digital transformation. They're kind of desperate to show some success, so they might launch chatbot, but it really doesn't have that human element. It's not really, the AI in my mind isn't accurate enough at the moment to be a substitute for a human person. That hasn't been that great. So there's some sporadic successes, I'd say. Me personally, my interest in digital transformation, or if you really specifically, I call it the IR4 element, Industrial Revolution 4, the automation of plants and so on, is based on augmented reality. But even there, which I've now been working on in some shape or form for the last 4 years, it's easy to get seduced by the technology. And I think maybe the one thing that for the key learning for me is, and I'm sure you feel this with knowledge management, knowledge management isn't the outcome. We're not trying to improve knowledge management, or we shouldn't be. And equally, we shouldn't be trying to improve digital transformation. That should be contributing towards a greater goal. And I think if that's missing, that's then going to cause failure. So there's no point just trying to improve digital transformation. It needs to be contributing towards a key strategic goal, like cost reduction, risk avoidance, growth, something underlying that it's hanging off, rather than that being the ultimate goal. If that makes sense.
Okay, good. Thanks for that, Arshad. We'll come back to that. Okay, Prashant, I know that you've been focusing quite heavily on this area for some time now. So great to get your views about, from a holistic view, what do you think is the general health of digital projects? And what have you got examples of that are working and those that are failing?
I'll try my best to answer the questions there. I would like us all, like those that are listening, and also to the panel, to think about going back to 4, 5, 6 years back, when we started talking about digitalization in the energy industry, right? At least in oil and gas side and energy part. And how it started. It started a lot of things goes thanks to, or I'm calling it thanks in ironic terms, to the crisis, 2014 crisis. At that time came a lot of focus on cost cutting. And cost-cutting focus also came afterwards, came another focus on effectivity, like how we can be effective in what do we do. And that's how we started. Everybody, I mean, like many, they started, but right now everybody is doing some sort of innovation in-house, in either developing an MVP, trying to see how we can optimize things, what we do, how we can reduce cost and so on. So digitalization somehow, ironically, digitalization should help in breaking silos. So what we are doing is actually we are breaking many silos within the companies, but we are building new silos when it comes to collaboration and across the industries. So that's what I see. The current state is there are a lot of MVPs out there. There are many, they come and they say that they have fantastic products, really great products they can go, but not necessarily those products have been tested properly. Probably they haven't been tested properly with the end users. So when you bring them along, bring them on board just to see what's the status, and I'm not going to name many names here, then you find out that these fantastic products are not necessarily fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Arshad, on some of your examples you have given. There are some products that are really, really good, but most of the products are not necessarily being tested properly, or it's been just used the buzzword and like the market is, everybody's talking about digitalization, so let's go ahead with that. So that's one of the things I wanted to say. There is, you asked as well, like what is actually working?
Yeah. What do you see working? What do you see? What successes do you see out there?
Yeah, at least from our company and those that work with us, that we see that this digitalization drive has given us some of the new fantastic good words, and we are really using it. And Nanna mentioned about agile, Scrum, Sprint, or whatever you call it. It's been now being used as a way of working. Like in the new project I'm part of, Nuaka, where we have done a lot of sprints and kind of agile way of working within the team. So this is one of the changes I have seen in the last 5-6 years, that we are really utilizing it in other things than digital, just our daily work. There are also other things we have seen, like you bring different types of people within the organization and some others. And we have demonstrated the ability within our company to quickly develop softwares. That's also one of the new things I have seen from my point of view. The thing which is not working in a way is to bring the ecosystem together. And commercialization of ecosystem, that has been a kind of difficulty and tricky. And user involvement needs to be better in a way, involve them earlier. And implementation in general is impact and affects everybody. And thought about implementation should also be, everybody needs to think. But the final word from me would be, what's not working is sharing. Not everybody is actually sharing what they are struggling with, what they have developed with, and everybody is like on a fast train just to do a little bit of job and just going out to test without even considering what value it will bring and what kind of problem we are solving. Some of the companies coming with a solution and looking for the problem. It should be other way around, that you start with the problem and find the solution.
Yep. Okay, thanks for that. I'll come back to the element about sharing later, because that's absolutely fascinating behind that. I think from my own perspective, I was actually with IBM in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we had the big push on e-business. If any of you can remember that, everything was e-business, and it's. I was talking to an ex-colleague a number of weeks ago, and it's almost like deja vu. You know, we're rebranding it now as digitalization, but then it was e-business, work on demand, and it took time to come to fruition, but eventually it did, and now we're all e-business as per se, but it took time, and there were failures along the way, which I hope we learned from that element. Okay, thanks for that. I thought the next question just to throw out is, if we have failures, how can we stop some of these failures? And in fact, that links to the next question about how can we learn from the current projects happening out there. Again, I'd love to get your experiences about, are organizations talking to each other? I know the big consultancies are having a big push across oil and gas. They're all competitive, of course, but other oil and gas companies talking to each other, energy companies about learnings, and how can we prevent some of these learnings, prevent some of the failures and capture some of these learnings? So Nanna, maybe throw that out to you first. What's your view on the market and what you're seeing out there?
Well, it depends, I would say. So I think there is a lot of nice collaboration going on if we look for standards, industrial standards like the CIFOR standards, and then where you actually create a very, very basic standard of how do we store data, because if we want to go away from putting all of the stuff into documents but store everything in data, then if we would have one standard and all the customers would use the same standard and all the oil and gas engineering companies also would then use the same standards, this would make everything a lot easier. So if we look at that, I think there is definitely an openness to share and also to look into, to find a solution together, because we all know that we can all profit off it. But if it comes to that I think that I found a solution that nobody else has. Obviously, I think there is a lot of competitive thinking, but I think if you think as an entrepreneur, probably, and you would get yourself, you want to get yourself forward, this is a very natural thinking. If I look into the digital transformation and the Intel, what we try to push a lot, then I definitely, if you ask me, 1 and 1 always makes more than 2. And if you share and if you are open and if you also share about what has not gone right and what did I learn out of it, then the other people don't have to do the same failure again, right? So, and this will definitely make you a lot more and a lot better than you can be if you just think in silos. And to take that out of this has to happen in my company because I can profit of it, but take that out, I think that hasn't happened, but that would be definitely a step which would bring everybody a lot more forward, a lot faster than we are moving right now. But to be very honest, I don't see that happening now. Okay,
because we're still quite a young, immature industry at the moment. So the concept about benchmarking, are there such things in digitalization, benchmarking, best practices?
Yeah, so I think that you could, if you look for success stories, you can find a lot, and then you can look into, okay, how did I achieve in that area of expertise? Let's say blockchain. How many projects did I do in blockchain? And then I could definitely benchmark myself to each other. But if you go away from the technological part, and I think we don't even have understood what could be a good KPI for digitalization. What does that mean? Does it mean how agile we are, or how transparent, or how collaborative, or how big the automation grade is, or whatever? I think we haven't understood this, and since I haven't understood that, I think to go into how can I benchmark myself with others, it's really complicated.
So that there's a big opportunity there. I think around measurements, analytics, KPIs behind that, to create some standardization around that. Okay, thanks for that, Nanna. Arshad, over to you then.
Good question, Hank. I think when it comes to not sharing, I think, at least in my experience, I found some oil and gas companies that, pretty much all won't share on certain specific things. And I think that's completely fair. You wouldn't want a competitor or even, at our most confidential level, somebody knowing where your oil wells are in your country, so that's truly quite guarded, I think, within a lot of the a lot of companies. There's other things. I remember actually I was getting a flight back from Azerbaijan as a quick break for my family, and I met somebody from Saudi Aramco. I was working for PDO at the time, and I mentioned that I worked for PDO, which is Petroleum Development Oman, for everyone. And they said, "Oh yeah, PDO. We've gone over to kind of learn about your enhanced oil recovery processes, which is something that Oman, because of the terrain and it's difficult to actually extract the oil. This is something that I'd say that they perfected, and it gave me a little bit of pleasure knowing that the two companies are willing to kind of knowledge share on a concept like that. They're obviously happy to share. And then I heard other stories, you know, for cybersecurity, which I think Aramco is also quite strong on. You know, they've had these kind of knowledge sharing events with other companies. And I think just as a concept, if we go back to BP, I said I wouldn't mention companies, but I guess I'm saying in a positive event. So with the BP stuff, it's quite public, but you probably heard of the good old peer assist. So speaking to one of the original practitioners from the knowledge management team there, I remember him explaining that it cost BP around $100 million to drill a well, probably offshore. And at one point, they failed to find oil 5 times, so that's $500 million lost. So Lord Brown, who was the CEO at the time, and was a great supporter of knowledge management, made it mandatory to perform a peer assist before a team actually went and did the same project or a similar project, so they could learn before, if you like, an event. Which is, you know, it's as you know, it's a simple concept, but a very, very powerful concept. And, you know, if it can save, you know, potentially $100 million, then, you know, there's huge gains to be done. And obviously, I think that's a very, very powerful way of learning before. And, you know, as my uncle used to say, you know, a smart person doesn't learn from their own failures; they learn from other people's failures. And I think that's the best form of lessons learned, rather than being, you know, reactive, to be proactive. And this is where the value of learning before an event really comes in.
Okay, thanks for that, Arshad. Okay, Prashant, over to you then. Your views on this?
Yes, my views on failure and success. So if I'm just going to go into take a bit from the evolutionary perspective. I mean, like as human beings, like it's we remember quite well. Nanna also mentioned, Arshad as well mentioned, like we remember quite well what we achieved and what we succeeded, and that's why there are so many lessons learned. You know, not lessons learned, but best practices, right? Like how you do things bad in a good way. But we learn a little bit less or lesser from the things we do wrong, like and I think there's something to do with the consequence as well. When we see that there are consequence of failure is like life-threatening or it's important for our survival or something, then probably we remember these things. So we have a lot to learn here as well when it comes to digital like failure, how we would learn from each other. And perhaps we don't see the value. Perhaps we don't see the consequence in terms of values, like how much it would cost us. Because at this stage, a lot of companies are in a very early stage. So it's more like seen as an investment rather than as a kind of trouble towards our values. But your question, coming back to your question about sharing. From Aker BP's perspective, like we really support the data liberation drive. We have been quite vocal about that in the last years, about like industry, everybody needs to share data because it will really help us to move forward. It will really help us to change and transform the industry. That was one of the things. But we do see like the picture. I mean, I won't say that it's nobody's sharing and nobody's talking and nobody's sharing the failures, but very few are actually sharing. You have certain closed doors roundtable meetings where these kind of projects, some sort of learning comes out, but otherwise in the open and public domain, not very many those they are sharing. But from our point, we do have a strategic partnership with some operators, with some of our partners or suppliers, and there, from our point of view, from our side at least, we do the sharing we can. One thing I want to also mention, our CEO, he also says in a lot of occasions he has said like bad news travels fast. And he encourages everybody to share the failure. He encourages us to share like what actually went wrong, because it will somehow help us in learning. And it also helps us when you are a front runner in some sort of initiatives, then it's much better to inform the others following you and share with you. So,
so that's very, very visionary, because a lot of organizations, they try to hide bad news. But I used to work with one of the great KM gurus, David Snowden, when I was at IBM. And he believes that we don't learn from best practices, we learn from worst practices. And the analogy always uses, is when was the last time you opened up a 200-page book of best practices, actually read through it? But you sure may be interested in worst practices. Also, the whole concept about organizations like Shell, they moved away from the term best practices or good practices to something called practices worth replicating, which I think is very opportune on that. I'm just looking at some of the chat coming in. We've got a lot of chat. Sorry about this so far. But Nanna, I've got a question from Pino Fernando, who asks, what do you think are the skills that people should acquire to accompany the change in digital transformation?
There are a lot of. Yeah, well, I will tell you nothing new probably now. If I say you definitely should do, you should do design thinking and customer focus, because we are as one of us already said it. We all love our solution. We all love the solution, and we don't ask, does the solution really solve the problem, or do I actually understand what the problem really is? Which is probably the nature of an engineer, because we have an equation. There's an X. I solve for X. That's the solution. Dot. But I will never ask, how did I actually create that equation, and is the equation right? Because if I solve for X, I am finished. And I think this is definitely something. Customer focus is one we definitely have to get into more. You have to, I think, if you are looking beyond, and if you are seeing the vision behind it and the bigger picture, and not looking into what is now happening here right in front of me, but what is happening around me, and what do the other people do, and then go away from, I only think in my silo and only think if my department does best, this is how I will achieve. But in the end, because in the end, it's always bigger. It's a project. It's a company. It is not I myself succeed, but the whole thing has to succeed. And well, to keep motivated in times when you also fail sometimes, and to keep the good spirits up is also something that you definitely have to bring, because sometimes we fail along the way. We fail often. We hopefully fail fast, but we fail often to get the best out of it. And so you have to be quite resilient to that, and have to keep yourself motivated. And I think that is also something that probably our leaders have to learn in future, that a motivated employee is the biggest asset you have. And how can I get to that point? So I do have to foster also curiosity and to get the people into creative state of mind, maybe also give them some freedom to do that, and not always look into how can we be 150% efficient, right? And then the last thing is, I think, to be open also for diversity. I know that this is a word that is a big buzzword as well, but what I definitely perceive is that a person who's working in quality is looking at the numbers until, I don't know, the fifth point, the fifth number after the comma, and an engineer will say, what is he doing? But he's from quality, and somebody from controlling is probably looking into, but we have to look into the bigger picture, and we have to see like what it is bringing now and what it is bringing in 5 years, and all these different perspectives, not only going from I don't know from race or from sex, or but also looking into the people are different. Some are engineers, some are control. Also going into that and understanding and embracing that as an asset, and not believing that only my opinion is right, and that my approach is the right one, but also listening to the others. These would be a whole set of things that you should bring. Fantastic. I think.
Well, that's wonderful. Thanks for the feedback. I've got a very interesting comment from Mohammed, who says, I believe that the industry should collaborate together to standardize and develop a digital strategy and use this for training, employee development across the industry. That mirrors what we were talking about earlier. So, Arshad, what do you think about that, about having some kind of standardized practices for digitalization?
So I want to say yes, and I think there's certain things that definitely, can be what we say omni-applicable, right? Can be applied everywhere and should be applied everywhere, and that's maybe some of the benefits of the best practice even. But I'm just interested to hear from, I guess, everyone in terms of how does the how does the company culture and how does the country culture affect the implementation of these things? I was working on an interesting project, actually, a project even for it was an international charity, and I actually learned something. So one of them was to review their knowledge and learning initiatives in Asia. So speaking to people in Bangkok and Malaysia and Bangladesh and Timor-Leste. And I remember speaking to a country director for this international charity where they said that, the company was really based in the West, even though it's an international company, and they wanted to launch a collaboration platform and everyone to use this collaboration platform. And they said, some of my stakeholders, when they want to share their knowledge, they start to sing or start to do a dance. Which is quite alien, that's not something that I do. But for my stakeholders, this is quite normal for them. And this was based on the specific culture of that country. And I remember this person saying that my worry is that we're pushing this Western-centric focus of what collaboration should be like on a culture that learns in different ways. And I'm just wondering, I believe digital transformation is a good thing. But do we have a cookie-cutter approach where if it works in the West, it's definitely going to work in the East? I'm not sure it will. Right.
No, very good. Thanks for that. Okay. I've got another interesting comment from Dave Wallace, who said he can remember the e-business.com boom. The .com 2000. If any of you were in the working world at that stage, and he says he remembers how the big consulting companies were pushing immature technology. And we had, multi-millionaires growing up overnight, and he sees that very similar things are repeating itself now. And most of the early entrants actually failed. Any of your comments on that, Prashant? If you're,
I think a good observation there as well. At least on the failure. But here we're talking not about like some new technology. Here we are talking about digital transformation is not about technology. It's about ways of working, and we will definitely change the way we work. I mean, like, how many of us actually call the phone as smartphone anymore? We just call it a simple phone, a mobile, right? We used to call it a smartphone when it came. Just it became part of our everyday life. And digital will also become the same way. We won't talk in a few years, we won't talk about a lot about digital because it will be the way of working. So I think I don't know if I have a clear answer to that, but I just wanted to say, like, digital transformation will stay. It won't be like a bust, which many talked about, but those they don't have a product which will help and show value, they won't survive for sure.
Right.
You need to think about the values there.
Okay. Sorry.
Value result.
Right. Sorry. The comments are actually really great coming in there. Sorry, we were running out of time, but I got another interesting reply from Uwe, who said that digital transformation is linked to digital technology. But have we considered this? The catastrophic failures. Most of these solutions are cloud-based. What happens if the cloud fails, or cyber attacks, cyber crimes? Similar to the American retail oil tanks in the States, the refineries. We haven't discussed that. The catastrophic failure.
Well, we are an industry which has a really good record in barrier management, right? Definitely, we do have it. Like we manage quite well the risk, and this is also seen as a risk. Maybe that could be also the reason why we didn't come at once at board. Why it's taking time, because we really need to go through the risk management, all the part, like what kind of barrier we will have.
Yeah.
And cybersecurity is definitely a big barrier, or at least this is something we definitely need to have. So I'm kind of confident, and also a bit. I do believe that we will definitely manage that. As in industry, I'm saying. So.
Right. Good. And last one from I think it's Ben Abunu. Says sharing successes and failures it should be a good thing, and we should have a dedicated conference. So hopefully we're generating some interest around that.
Yeah,
good.
I mean, isn't it? We can't prevent failures, but and I think we should minimize. But we should not. Perhaps we should allow it at a lower scale, more as a learning. But we need to definitely. It comes to value proposition here again, right?
All right. Okay, I'm just conscious of the time. I'll start to slowly wrap up. But I think just to finish, I wanted to ask each one of you, if there was one takeaway to prevent failure, what would that be to prevent failure and to ensure success? And start with Nanna first. What is that one nugget that you want to share with us as a takeaway?
Yeah, I'm repeating myself now, but in the end, it's exactly what Prashant also started in the beginning. It's all about the people. It's not about technology or automation rate or how big your cloud is, how that in the end, everything is done by the people that are behind it. And even if we have unmanned, I don't know, construction sites or plants or whatever, at the end of the chain, there's always a human. I think that will never change. And that's, I think, what Arshad also said with augmented reality. It will always be together, and a human will always be involved, in my opinion.
And I totally agree with you. But unfortunately, my experiences so far is most of these big digital transformation projects are being run by IT departments. And people is actually one of the last things on their minds. I don't know, Arshad, whether he's smiling there, but
no, you're absolutely right. I think when one of the questions was to ask what are some of the values, I think that should be one of the values. If you're involved in people change projects, that you should have a level of empathy. You should have a level of maybe even charm, because you're trying to change hearts and minds. It's not just about being a technical sponge. And I think I think Prashant kind of alluded to that, and I think that this is where the people side comes in essentially.
Okay, so and your one takeaway, Arshad, to prevent failure?
I think, definitely. I think the people aspect, I absolutely agree with that. I think also just, again, it's very easy to get seduced with the technology. When I saw augmented reality, straight away I jumped to, I've got this augmented reality, let me find a use for it. The way to do it is to find a problem and then apply it as a solution, not the other way around.
Yes.
Don't lead with technology or augmented reality or virtual reality or mixed reality or anything that's in this digitalization environment, and then look for a solution for it, because I think that's the road to failure.
Very good. Excellent. Good. And Prashant, over to you then for the last session.
Yeah, I mean, the question is about one takeaway on how to prevent the failure.
Yes.
I would repeat again the same thing, that we can't prevent failure. We can't prevent failure in a way completely, but we should definitely allow it at a lower scale or lower level. And it starts and ends and everywhere. It's about people. So my thinking is we should definitely encourage our people to be curious, to learn from others, to share. The sharing culture would definitely help us, not preventing, but from learning, so that we make less of mistakes in a way, and share those so that the others follow their footstep and do less of that.
So it's learning
and not like making the best practice, but kind of failure practice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. Okay, listen, I think we've covered the key questions. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
It's just interesting when we say about failure. You've got a lot of experience in this area. Would you say that failure, to fail once can happen, and that shouldn't be too badly chastised, but to fail twice on a repeat failure, that's almost inexcusable. This is where the lessons learned isn't working, and it should be working.
Yes, yeah. No, I mean, I've worked with some American organizations, and they come up with a very Americanism, but it says if you're going to fail fast and then learn from it. But and communicate that failure. Yeah,
I think it's the company culture as well, a lot to do with that, right? If your company allows you to be honest and share that, that's a totally different story than you're just in a culture where it's not allowed at all to share.
So,
good. And it gives also the possibility to fail early, right? What Prashant already said before, that you should fail at this small scale, and not if you have created millions and millions of invest into something and then you fail.
Value proposition. Think about the value all the time, right?
Right. So. Good. Listen, well, I think many. I really enjoyed the session with all of you, and many thanks to the attendees. Some really interesting comments coming through there.